There we go. Okay, Mel, I turn it over to you.
All right. Thanks, Rachel. Welcome, everyone. It's February 7th, and we're happy to join all of our advocacy leads for the UNA genuine chapters and regular chapters of UNA. And we're very glad you've called tonight. I hope all of you have received the agenda that Rachel reminded us of today. It's got a little timeline. We'll try and stick close to that, but it's not militaristic. We're just going to help guide the meeting using that. Are there any additions that you'd like to make to the agenda before we begin? As we're saying that, I will say, unless you're called upon or are speaking, if you'll mute your phone with a *6 on most phones, that'll help keep the line from being filled with extraneous noise. We appreciate that. Do we have Micah and Chris on the line tonight?
Yep, Mike is here.
Mike is here. And Rachel, will we have Chris tonight?
I reminded him, but I'm not sure if he's going to join us.
Okay. In broad sweeping terms, we're just trying to get ready for our New York Global Engagement opportunity. Just get an update from our advocacy team at BWC and to be ready for the Leadership Summit coming early summertime here in June, and make sure that everyone has access to the latest information and tools to do advocacy in their chapters and divisions. So if I don't have any other agenda changes, I'd like to ask Mike as they get nice and close to your phone so people can hear you. I've seen the Senate budget agreement and I've seen House things in the news. Could you please bring us up to date on what's going on the Hill?
Absolutely, Mel. Thank you. It's funny, this call is just 100% perfectly timed for some big news. You kind of hinted at that. So kind of the state of play is, as you most likely know, is that the government is scheduled to shut down on this coming Thursday if there isn't a budget deal or another continuing resolution agreed to. And it looks like the Senate just reached a bipartisan deal that they're going to be sending over to the House tomorrow. So that deal is been sought after for quite a while. And what it will do is kind of put things back in regular order. It will fund the government for the rest of this fiscal year and allow Congress to refocus on some more day-to-day big-ticket items rather than just kicking the budget can down the road every couple weeks or months, as it's been going on for quite a while now. The deal itself will, this is important to us, is to raise the spending caps that were put on in 2011 as a result of the failure to reach a deal back then, as it's known, sequester. I'm sure we're all a term we're familiar with. So it lifts those caps by about $300 billion over the next 2 years. So what that means for us is that it lifts the caps on defense by about $80 billion for this year, and then about $63 billion for $80 billion for defense, I should say, and about $63 billion for non-defense. And that kind of keeps consistent with the following year as well. So what that means is there will be a bigger pool of money to hopefully spend on international affairs spending. Not much, but $60 billion more will be kind of spread across the federal budget. So it's good news. It kind of has some interesting bedfellow opponents, though. perhaps some of you saw Nancy Pelosi today spoke for something like 8 hours on the House floor. That's the longest continuous speech since 1909. I was just reading. So she spoke uninterrupted for 8 hours and publicly said that she will not support this budget deal, specifically because it doesn't include anything to do with the DACA deadline that's coming up, or anything really to do with immigration. That deadline is March 5th, so it's very quickly approaching. So Pelosi said she would not support it, and then a lot of hard-right conservative Republicans, the Freedom Caucus folks, and others like Senator Mike Lee, said that they would not support it either, just because of the increase in spending. So to get it done, McConnell and Schumer both support it. Speaker Ryan supports it. So we'll need a lot of Democratic votes in the House and moderate GOP votes to get this done. The president went on Twitter saying it's a great deal, all this sort of stuff, focusing specifically on the increase, the $80 billion increase in defense spending, but also it's good for non-defense. It extends CHIP from 6 years, which was just agreed to 10 years, has funding for some community health centers, some other things that are specific and positive. So that's what's going on with the budget. So we should have some clarity on that tomorrow, actually. Like I said, the shutdown is, the CR expires that we're on right now tomorrow at midnight. So the Senate has to pass it tomorrow and then send it to the House for action there. So that's one big thing that's happening. The other one is the president's budget, which is scheduled to be released next Monday. It was originally going to be this past Monday, but got pushed back because of the shutdown. So this coming Monday, President Trump's FY19 budget's going to be released. I'm sure we all kind of remember what was in, or the sort of the headline items that were in or perhaps not in the president's FY18 budget. What we're hearing is for 19 not to expect a huge departure from last year, especially in regards to international affairs spending. It'll be more of the same or worse, perhaps even more of a reduction. As we know, though, that document last year was kind of dead on arrival, and the budget deal that Congress just agreed to tossed out the vast majority of the president's cuts to international affairs spending in the UN and others. But as a political document, people will be looking at this. There's a lot of attention paid to it. One interesting, I think, kind of tidbit that we'll be talking about, and I think will be a useful advocacy point, is that the president's budget request is rumored to request about $700 billion in defense spending. It's a 7% increase over last year. And for comparison's sake, we talk about peacekeeping obviously quite a bit. It's the single largest ticket item in the UN. The UN peacekeeping budget for the same period is about $7 billion. So $700 billion versus $7 billion. That's for all of the UN peacekeeping. That's not our portion of the contribution. It's the entire budget. So pretty easy to do the math on that when we talk about U.S. military spending versus UN peacekeeping spending. So that's a kind of headline item you'll see coming out. The budget's also rumored to include some government reform plans that detail individual agency workforce reduction plans. So that's targeted at a lot of agencies, but specifically keeping an eye on State Department. This long-term reform that Secretary Tillerson is kind of taking on. What that all means, we'll get some more clarity in the budget that's coming out next Monday. And the other couple things to be aware of, just some friction points as we look forward to the next 10 months or so. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about what happened with UNRWA. $250 some odd million is being withheld from the U.S. To UNRWA. UNRWA is the UN refugee agency for Palestinians. Runs much of the West Bank, schools, hospital, even normal day-to-day functions that a local city government would do, like picking up the trash, things like that. UNRWA handles a lot of that. So that's an issue. It's gone sort of back and forth. First, we were scheduled to disperse about $120 million to UNRWA, and then they dispersed $60 million. Said, well, it's on hold. Then they sort of said, well, you're not going to get the rest until some reforms happen. So it remains to be seen if this is something that's just happening right now and they're waiting to get something back from UNRWA, or if this is sort of a permanent, this is all you're getting for the rest of the year type deal. Not a lot of clarity yet. What I will say is a lot of other donor governments have moved up their donations, their contributions. So the immediate kind of crisis that UNRWA was in has been temporarily avoided, but those donations, those contributions aren't increased. They aren't extra money. It's just money that was scheduled to be released at a later date. So this is still a crisis in development. Another thing, again, I'm sure we all saw UN Security Council vote on the U.S. designating Jerusalem as Israeli capital, all the things that happened in the Security Council there, and then the General Assembly voted 128-9 with 35 abstaining, chastising the U.S. for making that designation. That's a very bipartisan issue in D.C. And something that could create some more friction later on. Another issue was UNDP in Iraq. Perhaps some of you saw Vice President Pence a couple months back very publicly criticized the UN development program in Iraq for favoring protection and assistance for Christians as opposed to, or for Muslims, for Muslims as opposed to Christians. So that's an issue that we're seeing on the Hill when people talk about just UN in general. That's something they're focusing on, and something it's a total misinterpretation of UNDP's operations in Iraq, but nevertheless, it's a narrative that's being pushed, and a lot of members of Congress are now, when they think about the UN or when we're talking to them about the UN, they're bringing this up, and it's kind of they're understanding the UN through through this lens. And then one other thing, this is kind of more in the future, but this is also important here for U.S.-UN relations, in that the dues, the scale of dues that we pay for peacekeeping, those negotiations to negotiate the new scale of assessment is happening. The deadline is this December. So, as you know, right now we're accruing arrears in our peacekeeping funding, about $250 million every year. And so Ambassador Haley and her team are trying to come up with a plan to get the rate at which we pay for peacekeeping from 28% to 25%. So I know those are a lot of details and whatnot, but just some things as we're looking forward to the year. We have some really good news. A couple of things I just want to point out is the full UN Security Council was in D.C. at the end of January. Met with President Trump, met with Ambassador Haley was there guiding them around. I would say that's a very positive thing, and it's actually quite rare. The Security Council has now come to D.C., come to the White House twice in the last year, which is something that didn't happen at all in the last 8 years of President Obama. So there's just a positive step. It's small, but it's something. During the meeting, the president said some positive things about the Security Council. He said that they're doing some good work and proud to work with the Security Council, some things like that. So again, small positives, but also leading in the right direction, I hope. And then some bigger news, perhaps you saw. I think BWC and UN Foundation all blasted this out. I think UNA as well, but there was a Government Accountability Office report that was actually released just yesterday, and it went very a deep dive into the cost effectiveness and benefit of peacekeeping. And this is a report that two members of Congress, Senator Corker and Senator Cardin, asked the GAO to look into about a year ago, and they came out with this report yesterday, and it found a talking point that UNA has used for a very long time, which is that it's 8 times cheaper for the U.S. to support a UN peacekeeping mission than to deploy our own U.S. military forces. So the last report that looked at this was in 2006. It found the exact same thing, this 8 times savings number, and it found it again when they looked at another mission 12 years later. So it's really positive. There's been some great press on it. CNN picked it up. The Cardin put out a release. We're working with some other military leaders to do an op-ed talking about and trumpeting these findings. So it's just our whole narrative about how valuable the UN is, not only for achieving American foreign policy goals but also saving us money is perfectly in line with this. So that's good news. I will leave it at that, and I'm happy to take any other questions you guys might have.
Okay. We've got someone is coughing off the line. If you can just hold the phone farther away when you cough is helpful, or put it on a piece of fabric. That'll help us. If there are anyone with questions, if you unmute your line, let's take a couple of minutes and get questions answered. One of the ones I'd like to know is, do you have a timeline on the briefing book? And then we're going to have a discussion later on about timing of our upcoming advocacy alerts in regard to the same processes on the Hill. Has Chris joined us? Do you know? I don't hear him.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions for Micah Spangler?
Yeah, this is Karen Mulhauser in National Capital Area, and I wonder, Micah, if you could send Mel or Rachel, who could then forward it to the rest of us, the link to the GAO report. That would be a good thing for us to be able to send out to our lists.
Oh, absolutely, and I'm sure we can send it to you. But also, if you go to just betterworldcampaign.org right now, it is the main the first thing you will see, the splash page there. It has
Great.
kind of our summary, our press release, and then a link to the actual report. And
wonderful.
It's great is the UN tweeted about it. They retweeted us when we were talking about it, so they're aware of it. betterworldcampaign.org's got it right there on the front page.
Thank you.
That'd be super to put on social media as well. That's great.
Absolutely.
Micah.
Hi, this is Jenny. Oh, did I make it in?
Go ahead.
I just had a quick question. What were the congressmen's names again? Corker and the other?
Ben Cardin.
Yes, the ones that yes, Chairman Corker and Senator Cardin, who actually update I should have mentioned is perhaps you might have heard about Senator Menendez from New Jersey. The issue, he had this trial for corruption and other things, and when that first happened, it must have been a year ago now. He was the ranking member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and he stepped aside, and Senator Cardin from Maryland became the ranking member. With the Justice Department declining to retry Senator Menendez, he has now regained his seniority, and he is now taken, I guess you could say, the ranking member slots. So all you folks in New Jersey, if any of you are on the line, engaging with his office will again be very, very important. And I mean, Cardin was fantastic for us. Senator Menendez has a couple more, somewhat more critical views of the UN, Venezuela, Cuba, a couple things. Not negative by any means, but a little more critical eye. So outreach to his office will be extra important going forward.
And those of us who live in the National Capital Area will thank Ben Cardin for his service.
Absolutely, and even the day that this GAO report
election
actually came out.
in November, so we got to make sure we get him back in the mix into the Senate.
Yeah. That's
This
right.
is a
He's up for re-election.
nonpartisan group.
Yes.
We all have our favorites.
Yes. Okay. I'd like to keep moving on our agenda. If Chris is not on the line, I'll try and summarize what he said on several things. Many of us saw his interview that has now been posted to social media that he did last week. And when he was out here in Southern California a little less than a month ago, he made a persuasive case that, even with the cuts that have occurred to peacekeeping and to some of the women's reproductive freedoms and rights groups, the fact is, when we started with a budget cut of around 50%, and then that was cut to much less than that in the House, and then even further, those reductions were reduced, resulting in roughly, I think, a 95% or so of full funding budget from the United States, which, given where we started, it could have been a lot worse. And I think some of the advocacy that many of you have been helping to achieve out in Chapterland as part of the responsibility, and of course our success at the last leadership summit when I visited. I think we got to 270 some odd offices, and I hope that number will rise past 300 at the coming leadership summit. So we've got a lot to be celebrating, even though we haven't achieved a full 100% funding of what we were working for. Do you want to add to that story, Micah, or correct anything I've misstated?
I think that's absolutely right. We have to definitely look at the bigger picture. And, I was just kind of putting together a presentation. I'm going to be in, shout out to everyone in Northern California, be speaking at their, joining them for their semi-annual meeting on Saturday. But I was kind of putting together some slides and presentation and just kind of starting with, where we began a year ago. And, the cuts that we were faced with were drastic. They were drastic.
Yep.
And where we're at now is worlds away. So it's been very, very positive. Yeah.
Thank you. Which leads us right into our next agenda item, unless there's a question or comment on that, of upcoming advocacy actions. I know.
Well, just one comment, Mel, and that is maybe.
Yes, please.
In case anyone missed it, this is Karen. Maybe just send a link to Chris's remarks to the advocacy leads. A lot of people maybe already have it, but
that's good. I think it's on the UNA homepage, but I'm not sure. Rachel,
okay.
Do you recall?
Are you saying the comments from the Southern California meeting or the Facebook Live?
No, the Facebook Live interview.
Oh, it's on UNA Facebook page. We can send the link.
Okay. Good.
Great.
Not everybody has Facebook, so please do send links.
Oh, well, you'll need to have Facebook to access it.
Yeah, it's on Facebook, so
Yeah.
it's hard to link.
No. Hold on, guys. If it's made public, she doesn't have to log in to view the video. Just
Okay.
so you know.
Okay, great.
So it's still a good marketing tool, even if they don't have Facebook. I run into this.
Great.
That is
I
true.
personally
Good
do,
correction.
but I can't vouch for everybody on the UNA NCA committee, so that's why if there's a link, that'd be great.
I thought there was a link to it in one of the emails that Rachel sent this past week.
Okay, we'll get a new link out to everyone.
We'll send it again.
Thanks.
The upcoming advocacy actions, I think we know that during the budget cycle and as we get ready for the leadership summit in June, I believe I'm accurate in saying we plan advocacy actions during the New York meeting at Global Engagement Summit. We hope as many of you will be there as possible. Will that be live streamed on the internet? Do you know,
Yes,
Rachel?
it's going to be on UN TV, the entire program. So not only our opening and closing sessions, but also the breakout sessions. They each simultaneously will be on UN TV. So we will be
Wonderful.
sending
We really
out,
need to
and
get
we'll
that.
send a notice to the entire membership the week of and the day of, instructions on how to access it, and also put it on social
Rachel?
media.
This is so awesome. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you guys doing this, because I so badly want to share what I experienced in New York with other people. And my live streams are not nearly as good as web TV. That's going to be so great. Thank you so much.
Well, also, you can watch this one when it comes out, but also all the others for the past several years have been archived.
Right.
Right.
So they're there, and this one will be archived too.
Exactly.
You're giving me marketing ideas to take snippets and flashbacks of all of these things.
Good.
And to
Micah,
answer
do you know
question,
what?
Sorry, go ahead.
Micah, do you know the nature of your advocacy moments for New York yet?
Yep, and I can actually give you a preview. We have a new email set up for the summit. Anyone's on their phone, I assume most of you are right now, your phone or in front of your computer. If you go to unausa.org/action, that's unausa.org/action, you can see the email that we will be using during the summit. As in a departure from last year, because we kind of revamped the schedule this year. Rachel had some really fantastic ideas about how to get people kind of just more blood flowing. There's going to be a lot of breakout sessions. There's going to be a lot more movement. And so actually we're going to have one big final advocacy moment towards the end of the day, kind of a, we just learned about X, Y, and Z over this, amazing, the last 8 hours. Make sure the information you learned today doesn't just stay in this room. We want to take it to DC where it matters most. And I'll be leading everyone in one big advocacy action using that URL at the end of the day.
And it's mobile friendly.
Yes, it is. Yeah, take a look at it, and let us know what you think. If you have any suggestions, please feel free to send them my way. But we wrote it in a way that's general. It talks about the UN's work on a couple different hot button headline issues, but it also talks about reform because this is a very bipartisan letter, lots of different members of Congress. So we talk about the good work the UN is doing, but also some of the reforms that have happened recently in terms of slimming the budget, doing things like that I think resonate across parties.
And I would say when you test it out, because it's ready to go whenever you want, but we'll have one big moment, like Micah said, at the summit. Do it on your phone so you can just get a feel for what people in the General Assembly Hall will do. But this will also, once again, be on web TV, so we're asking all members to participate in this.
And this site will be available for any UNA meetings as well.
Mm-hmm.
Question? Go ahead.
Yep, you can use it. Yeah, this is something that everyone can use and will sort of be the default advocacy action.
My quick question is, it looks like the hashtag is different. I'm picking up on the hashtag USUN.
It's USA, hashtag USA for FORUN. So we've been using that for the last year.
Hang on 1 second. What do you mean by hashtag?
So when we use social media, when we tweet things out, we're using the hashtag, our hashtag USA for UN.
Sure. I thought you were talking about the email, the URL that I just was talking about. There's no hashtags on that. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
because I just noticed the posts that we're doing that are forwarded from the Better World campaign, on all of their materials, it's hashtag USUN, which is great. But I just didn't know if we're going to do both or just the one that I was used to before, USA for UN.
Only USA for UN. That's the one that's tagged to UNA USA.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm painfully aware of the clock. I'd like to quickly ask Rachel for an abbreviated report on the upcoming Leadership Summit, and then we'll get to our timing of our upcoming in-districts and advocacy webinars, et cetera.
Sure. We have a great summit coming up. We are at capacity. So the General Assembly Hall will be full this year. We're going to have an earlier start at 9 a.m. It will last until 5 p.m., but doors will open at 7:30 a.m. We have a really great lineup of speakers that include Ambassador Curry, who is the ECOSOC ambassador, if I'm saying that correctly, from the U.S. mission. We have the president of the General Assembly. We have Jeffrey Sachs closing the conference, and we have a sprinkling of UN officials in between. Like Micah said, this year is a little bit different. We're going to have simultaneous sessions going on throughout the day. So one will be issues focused. One is called action focus, so people can make some action plans to take home with them. And there are just different types of sessions, and we're going to have a more detailed agenda later this week that's going to be posted on the Global Engagement Summit website. So that's the quick synopsis. It's going to be definitely a packed day.
At the risk of conflating things, I actually was also asking, can you give us an update on the June Leadership Summit? Do we know where it's going to be? June 10th to 12th.
We are close to making that decision. It's June 10th through the 12th. Most likely it will be in the International Trade Center in Washington, D.C. We just outgrew the National Education Association, so we're looking for more space, but that's most likely where it's going to be.
Excellent. And I know advocacy is going to be a central element of that.
Yes. And registration, we're hoping
programs.
Registration should open March 1st for the Leadership Summit.
March 1st.
Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful. That's helpful. I'd like to open it to everyone. We've got advocacy alerts coming in the coming months that all members will be directed to. But we're also trying to make sure that each chapter has the leadership training they need for making advocacy part of every chapter meeting. And these webinars that Micah led last year were very helpful to many people. We've got a lot of new advocacy leads, and so I think we'll have to repeat part of that. And it's always a good refresher course, even for people that have done it before. Are there schedules or topics that people are passionate that we cover? I'm thinking roughly we'll have something each month in the coming months before the Leadership Summit in June for advocacy leads to gain from.
I had a question. Could you teach us how to follow legislation so we can pick up when certain bills are put out that actually sort of focus on a UN thing and follow it along and do sponsorship kind of thing? We all want to be like mini Micahs.
Good. For those of you that are new, the advocacy webinars generally taught us how to use the briefing book. And I believe the briefing book's going to be coming to fruition here in the coming month or so, this year's edition. And it taught us how to be effective in leading our groups for advocacy moments and to plan and execute meetings with our elected representatives.
Actually, about going over the briefing.
Say again?
I'm repeating it to someone. I got it.
Okay, I didn't fully understand, but that's okay.
I didn't
The I'm aware that our advocacy agenda is a couple of years old now, and we used to do a very elaborate procedure about adopting resolutions and a very formal process for selecting. I think we've done a better job recently of tallying among the available options so that members and chapters could weigh in on which advocacy agenda items they thought were priority. Currently, of course, we are talking about the 1, 2, 3, 4, full UN funding, refugees, climate, and SDGs. Are there others? Well, actually, what I'm asking is, should we have another electronic tally, or are we satisfied the current agenda is doing the job for us for the coming year? Any comments?
Yeah, this is Herb Bearstock from California. This is a wonderful meeting. Can I just comment that when the surveys were done, both 2 years ago and 4 years ago, there was a very, very strong response about the global health SDG, because it was a wonderful one to advocate. It resonated with an awful lot of members of Congress. The second one, and you mentioned it in the agenda there, was to break out gender equality, women's rights, other women's issues, including trafficking, which most often affects women, although, of course, there's trafficking of men for labor and sex as well. And the third one that's got a lot of very positive feedback and interest, and I think it's quite relevant now more than maybe 2 and 4 years ago, is that we would be advocating for the peaceful resolution of conflict rather than reverting to military, and that the UN, of course, would play a special role in its prevention of violence and bringing justice in the problems that are contributing to violence. And of course, it would relate to the use of nuclear weapons and other things. But there's a lot of sentiment about that. We saw that last year at the Leadership Summit as well. So I'm not sure how you want to do this, Mel, in headquarters, whether you need it surveyed or whether you want to just put it in. But those were very, very important, I think, to have some background information for advocates, whether they use those or not when they go to the Hill or in the districts. But in many cases, there's a great interest in among the members of Congress as well as among our members. Thanks.
It's always great to hear from you, Herb. You're one of our best leaders on all of this. Other voices?
You know, I haven't paid nearly as much attention to this, but at some points in time, you hear about them cutting programs like UNICEF, problems for children, certainly women's equality, the issues that kind of attacking women's health in general. And these are things that I know here locally in Kansas City, people really care a lot about. So I think that, you know, where those kind of traditional places that funding has gone, what the status of those is, just like an update for people would be really useful in terms of points of rallying for our local communities.
Yes, that's one of the featured links on our advocacy at the national website, of course. Rachel, could you give us just 2 minutes on what's happening at the website? I think we're about to have a redesign that's going to be more mobile friendly.
Yeah, we actually are have collected RFPs for a new website, and we're in the process of selecting a web designer. That probably the actual process of beginning the web design won't happen until the summer, a lot of pieces have to fall into place. Where we're going to do a total revamp. It's going to be more of an action-oriented website. Right now, our website has a lot of information. It's very heavy information focused, and it's not easy to navigate, as you all know. But this will give us an opportunity to allow people to, for example, know how to take quick advocacy actions when they come to our site.
And I must say, in Southern California, we've followed Micah's lead to try and make advocacy training the central element of a major event each year. And even with the existing website, with even its navigation issues, there's rich resources there.
Mm-hmm.
And how to conduct an in-district meeting is pretty well specced out, and how to arrange it and the follow through. And please do copy National when you have one of those so you can report on the progress, because a lot of people are learning from the experience of others. And there's a lot of rich stuff there, and if we're singing with a common voice, I think the tune's going to come through more effectively. So I think we've got a reasonably good product right now, but it could be better. And that's kind of what the redesign will accomplish.
Right.
Are there other voices for what we need to be focusing on in the next few months?
Hi, this is Olga Widener from Carbondale, Southern Illinois chapter. I was going to say in 2020 we'll be celebrating the 75th anniversary. Is there anything we can put in the advocacy goals that we want to reach that we can be working on? We have 2 years to work toward that. And I was wondering if there's anything we really want to focus to achieve.
I would think the women's health and women's issues would be one of those that we could have some short-term achievements. One of the great progresses that's occurring with the SDGs is that we're getting better metrics and better measurement, so we know when things are going well or going poorly.
Well, the ratification of CEDAW could be one also tied into that, linked into it in a big way.
Yeah, this is Karen, and Mel, I just really want to thank you for raising that, because 2020 is also the 100th anniversary of suffrage in the U.S., and it's a good way for us to bring these global issues home and make the women's right to vote a reality, not only for our global agenda, but for November 2020. I mean, there are legal ways we can talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I'm glad that's one of the major ones under our existing advocacy links, and I think that can be brushed up and even freshened with recent developments. And I think that's one that we could get bipartisan traction.
Absolutely.
People that we
Absolutely, I agree. Mm-hmm.
And the agenda. Thank you for that reminder of the 100th anniversary. It sounds like a joint committee between the women's group and the advocacy committee. So let's work on that for sure.
Okay.
Other voices for things we need to be working on in the next few months.
In addition to a webinar on the briefing book, a one-pager that we can take for Hill visits or district visits that kind of sums it up and all that would be very helpful.
Sort of a handout that we could leave behind.
Something I'm sure Micah will be updating, because we have one on our website now that you can use for your in-district meetings, but I'm sure we'll update.
Yeah, I'll just address that quickly. As we'll definitely be doing that. We're just waiting to get the president's budget. We do that every year, and when we go in and we talk about the funding and the hot button issues and all that kind of stuff. But this is one of the reasons that the briefing book is slightly delayed, is getting the president's numbers in there is paramount. So we've been waiting for that to become public and for us to do our deep analysis on it so that we can sum it all up and package it up for everybody.
So
my comment was referring to a one-pager or a two-pager that we can leave in offices that sums up the main points of the briefing book?
Sure, in addition to the briefing book. But
yes, that we can leave in offices on Capitol Hill or in districts or what have you that sum up the main points. Is that something that you all would consider working on?
So it's something that's
part of the tradition.
It's there's one currently on the website, but what Micah is saying is it'll be updated once we get the president's budget. So if you go to our advocacy page now, you'll find it, but we'll update it.
And I think on behalf of Bill Matthews and the other Bill from Kentucky, I wanted to remind everyone that letters to the editor at a time like this, the GAO report on the effectiveness of peacekeepers, women's issues, which are on everyone's minds, environment, which many of our members are passionate about, refugees. I know our chapter has a refugee support for resettlement activities that's very active. These are just naturals for letters to the editor to raise the profile. And Micah, would you help pick us out here? We've got a few minutes left on timing of in-district meetings in the coming months. Is there a better time or a worse time to be scheduling in-district meetings?
Yeah, the best time for that is during one of the upcoming recesses, and we've traditionally kind of focused on April. So the last week of March and the first week of April are the Easter break. So Congress will be, we're supposed to be back in the district starting that last week of March and into the first week of April, which is April 1st is Easter. So we'll be targeting that week is good, and it kind of positions you in a good spot where that April, and then 2 months later is obviously the leadership summit and the lobby day. But we'll have the briefing book and one pager and everything done to coincide with that first week of April. The briefing book will be done much earlier than that, of course. But just to say that we'll certainly have it then for you.
So it sounds like we need a webinar in about a month from now. Get people ready to schedule an in-district with their Senate offices and their representatives. If you prepare for one, you're preparing for all. Because other than individual things said, if you're ready for a visit with one member, you're ready for a visit to several. So I'll pledge that Southern California will have several in-districts during that Easter break, and our committee will have a webinar before that Easter break so people have what they need and are comfortable going in and feel strong about what is being said.
Ellen, Micah, this is Herb again. Could I comment? There's been several references to having a one-pager on the budget. And, of course, we agree with that. That's a priority, the top priority. But these other three issues that you mentioned in the agenda and the other ones that I mentioned, I think really merit having a one-pager also. It's really important that we know what the position is and what the best arguments are to support the UN on climate action, as well as what we need to do to support nonviolent resolution of conflicts and preventing war. And that links to the peacekeeping activities, as well as, of course, the gender issues and perhaps global health, whatever it is. But not only to focus on one pager, but hopefully by the time we're supposed to go out in March and April, that as many as possible of those can be updated for that as well as for the June meeting. And thank you.
Yeah, those are wonderful points. I think the general trend we're trying to follow here is to speak with a common voice whenever possible, and then also not neglect the issues that are on the hearts of the local people participating if there are added issues. Herb makes an excellent point. There's a lot of passion for a number of issues. We want to hit our priorities and then go to the ones that people are feeling passionate about when possible. I do think the briefing book is a excellent starting place, and you can take the electronic version, shoot pictures of it, and make it into handouts where, like the support for the UN from our surveys, which continues very strong. They do make excellent talking points and excellent leave behinds. I want to encourage the committee to work together across the chapters. We can use Rachel as kind of our vector for people reporting in, that we learn from each other, that we not task Micah or Rachel with doing separate one-pagers for a lot of other issues, but offer what we think works in our area as a possible model for other people to use. So with as little staff as we have, and there's some changing of staff going on nationally, I don't want to task them with that level of detail beyond the briefing book is a massive piece of work, and I think the one pager is very worthy, but I want to go easy on other subjects that we have to have national produced for us. At least that's my opinion.
Mel, this is Bill Miller in Frankfurt. I totally agree with you, and I'm suffering from a terrible cold and laryngitis. But anyway, I want to thank you so much for the excellent leadership you provided over the years, and to all of the committee members. One other thing, just to follow up on you were talking about a minute ago, to the letters to the editor, those are really critical, and it would be very helpful if National could give us some type of a boilerplate letter to the editor or op-ed piece or whatever the case might be that we could sort of fine-tune, tailor to our own local media, and then get it out. One other item I'd like to mention, too, is that on Global Connections Television, TV show I've been doing for these many years, just did an interview not long ago with Munira Halif, and I think most of you know she is the Somali American who is the 2017-2018 U.S. Youth Observer to the United Nations. And I would just encourage you to go to globalconnectionstelevision.com and go to Video Gallery and to see the interview. And if you have a chance, pull it down, show it to your chapter division people, whatever the case might be. Try to get it on your local television station, community access television, or PBS, whatever the case might be. But there are many, many tapings, many shows that are on there that would be of interest to our folks and also to the local media. Mel, the last time you and I talked, I think about 2.5 years ago, Global Connections Television was hitting probably 10 or 12 million people a week. Today, we estimate right now we're hitting about 60 to 65 million people around the world each week. So again, I would just encourage people to go to globalconnectionstelevision.com, pull the shows down, and of course they are free, provided as a public service to help us better understand international issues. But I want to thank you and all the people on the committee tonight for really keeping up the great work and, as they say, rolling the stone up the mountain. And the mountain is getting steeper as it has over the past year, but we will prevail. But thanks again.
Thank you, Bill. You're one of the stalwart leaders and always articulate on these issues. I want to thank everyone for being on the call tonight. We will regather either over a webinar or another committee meeting in about a month. That's March 7th or thereabouts. And we also want to wish everyone a safe trip to New York City for later this month for the Global Engagement Summit, and make plans for June 10th to 12th in Washington, D.C. Are there any final words from you, Rachel, before we sign off?
No, thank you everyone for their leadership. We really appreciate it.
Well, and thank you,
Rachel.
Mel.
What you're doing for us.
Thank you,
Thank you
Rachel
all.
and Mel, for your leadership.
And Micah.
Thank you very
And
much.
You bet.
Yes, thank you very
Thank you.
much, Micah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Good night.